Anno 1800 is one of Ubisoft's most acclaimed building simulators, but now Anno 117 Pax Romana arrives to dispute the throne. And look, it didn't come to play. The new title takes the series straight to the height of the Roman Empire, with new features that make the old game seem almost outdated. Today I'm going to show you 10 things that Anno 117 does better than Anno 1800. And I warn you, some of them completely change the way you play Anno. I'm Matthew and the video is about to start. Anno 117 Pax Romana brought a new feature that, for me, changed the experience of building cities a lot, something I always really liked in the Anno series. The possibility of placing roads and buildings at a diagonal angle makes urban planning feel much more fluid and natural. Before, in Anno 1800 and the other games in the series, I always felt that I was stuck in a rigid grid system, which really limited creativity and left the cities kind of square, a bit stiff. This change brings a huge freshness for those who like to perfect the design of their cities. When I started playing Pax Romana and saw this freedom to place constructions diagonally, my first impression was that this finally reflected a more realistic way of building. After all, in real cities, no street or building is just right on the horizontal or vertical axis, and this little freedom makes everything more organic. You can create that feeling of winding streets and neighborhoods with their own personalities, escaping that square pattern that made the cities kind of mechanical. I felt more connected to the creative process of the game, you know? Besides, this flexibility makes the game more aesthetically pleasing. I always like to build beautiful cities in Anno, not just functional ones, and this diagonal possibility brought a huge differential. Now we can create squares, avenues, and even residential areas that seem more thought out, more alive. You can use the space much more intelligently, exploring corners and angles that were previously underused because of that limitation we had in 1800. Another cool point is that this new feature allows for more experimentation while planning the city. I keep remembering how many times in Anno 1800 I was frustrated wanting to create a more curvilinear or complex arrangement, but I felt kind of hostage to the grid. With this new freedom, I tried several different urban planning approaches, from narrower streets to routes that connect various tourist spots in the city with more charm and visual logic. This made me want to think more about aesthetics along with functionality, which is rare in strategy games. The introduction of roads and buildings at a diagonal angle in Anno is something that, for me, brings a qualitative leap in the series' urban design. It's not just a graphic detail, but a reinvention of the way we build our city, which makes the experience of playing much more pleasurable and interesting, even for those who like the more creative and visual side of the game. It's a new feature that I really wanted to see since the beginning of the series, and that now makes Anno 117 shine in its own way, standing out even against the acclaimed Anno 1800. Pax Romana hit the nail on the head by introducing a dynamic religion and belief system that, for me, brought a new layer of depth to the gameplay. Unlike what we saw in Anno 1800, where religions were more static and with few direct impacts, here you feel that every spiritual decision has real weight in the city. Patronizing Roman gods like Ceres or Neptune isn't just a visual detail, but a strategy that directly influences the development of your economy and your roots, and this won me over right away. As soon as I started exploring the temples and sanctuaries in the game, I realized how this system makes the experience much more immersive. I feel like I'm living in a vibrant, ancient Rome, where local beliefs really shape the progress of civilization, instead of just being a decorative element. The progression based on the beliefs generated is a subtle touch, but one that completely changes the way of thinking about advancement. Because you're not just building buildings, you're cultivating a culture and a way of life that impacts production and even the city's defense. The system also caught my attention for being very thematic and consistent with the historical setting of the game. The association of gods with specific bonuses like Ceres on farms and Neptune on ships not only reinforces the Roman lore, but also inserts a fun strategic layer. I found it incredible how this forces the player to adapt their religious choices according to the need of the moment, bringing a dynamism that is lacking in many other strategies focused only on resources and territorial expansion. Another aspect that I found very cool was the visual and narrative impact of these temples on the map. Seeing these places grow as you advance in beliefs gives a feeling of cultural achievement that goes beyond the logic of what is just useful in the game. It's a way of humanizing and rooting the city in myth and history, which makes everything more engaging for those who, like me, value the setting and theme in games of this magnitude. This dynamic religion and belief system is one of the great ideas of Anno 117 Pax Romana that, for me, surpasses what was done in previous versions, including the gigantic Anno 1800. It's a change that not only gives flavor and identity to the game, but also expands the strategic field, making you think not only about what you build, but about how spirituality can be an engine of progress and prosperity. This makes the experience much more complete and satisfying in historical and playful terms. Pax Romana surprised me quite a bit with the discoveries and research tree, which I found much broader and more accessible than that of Anno 1800. I felt that now the player has more freedom to decide which path to follow, without that feeling of being stuck in a rigid or overly complicated system. The division into economic, civil, and military trees brought an organization that facilitates planning, but without losing the strategic depth that the series demands. I found it particularly interesting how this new feature brings greater freedom to customize the playstyle. It's not just about choosing a standard research and following a script. Now, you can invest in various numerical bonuses that directly affect essential factors like farm yields, ship speed, or even defense efficiency. This made me feel that each match can be unique, as you will shape your city and your empire based on choices that truly reflect your style and priorities. Furthermore, the way the tree is divided makes it easier to see the impact of each research on the economy, civil life, and military power of your city. This clear separation helps to see the results of your decisions more immediately, which is very rewarding for those who like to balance city building with preparation for external challenges. I started to enjoy experimenting with different routes more, without fear of losing focus or getting lost along the way. Another point that caught my attention is that, despite being simpler to understand, this discovery tree doesn't lose its tactical complexity. On the contrary, the various numerical bonuses create a level of customization that made me think more about which advantages I wanted to prioritize to get the most out of my productions and strategies. This gives a greater sense of control and rewards experimentation, something I really value in games of this genre. The improvement in the discoveries and research tree in Anno 117 makes the progression system more fluid, strategic, and attractive, surpassing what I saw in Anno 1800. For me, this evolution symbolizes a perfect balance between ease of access and depth, allowing both more casual players and veterans to find fun and challenge in the development of their Roman cities and empires. Pax Romana surprised me quite a bit with the discoveries and research tree, which I found much broader and more accessible than that of Anno 1800. I felt that now the player has more freedom to decide which path to follow, without that feeling of being stuck in a rigid or overly complicated system. The division into economic, civil, and military trees brought an organization that facilitates planning, but without losing the strategic depth that the series demands. I found it particularly interesting how this new feature brings greater freedom to customize the playstyle. It's not just about choosing a standard research and following a script. Now, you can invest in various numerical bonuses that directly affect essential factors like farm yields, ship speed, or even defense efficiency. This made me feel that each match can be unique, as you will shape your city and your empire based on choices that truly reflect your style and priorities. Furthermore, the way the tree is divided makes it easier to see the impact of each research on the economy, civil life, and military power of your city. This clear separation helps to see the results of your decisions more immediately, which is very rewarding for those who like to balance city building with preparation for external challenges. I started to enjoy experimenting with different routes more, without fear of losing focus or getting lost along the way. Another point that caught my attention is that, despite being simpler to understand, this discovery tree doesn't lose its tactical complexity. On the contrary, the various numerical bonuses create a level of customization that made me think more about which advantages I wanted to prioritize to get the most out of my productions and strategies. This gives a greater sense of control and rewards experimentation, something I really value in games of this genre. The improvement in the discoveries and research tree in Anno 117 makes the progression system more fluid, strategic, and attractive, surpassing what I saw in Anno 1800. For me, this evolution symbolizes a perfect balance between ease of access and depth, allowing both more casual players and veterans to find fun and challenge in the development of their Roman cities and empires. Anno 117 brought a differential that really caught my attention: the optional land combat in the form of a mini RTS. For me, this reintroduction of land battles is a brilliant move, because it adds a layer of variety and strategy that I missed in Anno 1800, where the focus was almost exclusively naval. This system delivers a much more complete experience, especially for those who enjoy that Roman vibe of legions marching, which gives a touch of historical fantasy that I found very cool. What I liked about this new feature is that land combat isn't forced, it's optional, which made me feel in total control of what I wanted for my match. You can play in a more peaceful style, focusing on growth and trade, or go for direct confrontation if you prefer a more aggressive experience. This flexibility fits perfectly with the ancient Rome vibe and allows the player to choose what kind of ruler they want to be: a military strategist or an administrator focused on peace and prosperity. The part about it being a mini RTS brought a nice level of complexity, but without overcomplicating things. I really enjoyed being able to command my troops on land, manage formations and positioning, without it turning into a completely different game from what I already knew from Anno. For me, it's the perfect balance between maintaining the classic strategy of the series and bringing an element of action that enriches the gameplay without pushing away fans of the traditional formula. Furthermore, seeing the land battles happening on dedicated maps, with all that typical atmosphere of the period, gave me a sense of immersion that only strengthens the historical charm of the game. It's a detail that seems small, but that makes a huge difference, because it transports me to the heart of the Roman campaigns, something I really missed in the naval experience of Anno 1800. The optional land combat in Anno 117 is an innovation that, for me, brings more dynamism and choices to the series. It expands the strategic range and offers a richer and more varied experience, especially for those who like to alternate between peace and war in command of the Empire. It's an evolution that I found very welcome, giving a unique face to Pax Romana while maintaining the essence that has always captivated me in Anno. Pax Romana took the ship experience to a new level with the concept of customizable modular ships, something that really impressed me. Unlike the fixed ships of Anno 1800, here you can build your trade fleets however you want, fitting specific modules to optimize trades and commercial contracts. For me, this brought a more strategic and personalized pace to the game, because you feel you have total control over every little detail of your fleet, making maritime strategy deeper and more fun. What I found coolest is being able to adapt the ship exactly for the task it will perform. For example, including specific modules like those for clay tiles to strengthen certain trade routes or packs gave me a very concrete feeling of building not just ships, but true tools of commerce and diplomacy. This depth wasn't as intuitive in Anno 1800, and this change made me feel much more engaged in managing my fleet. Furthermore, this modularity gave a much more modern and dynamic feel to the naval gameplay. I liked how, now, your decisions have a more practical and visual impact, and you end up investing in planning not only the fleet's composition, but how each ship will act on the map. This also made the trade routes seem more alive and strategic, because the type of ship directly influences the success of the operations. Another point that deserved highlighting for me was the feeling that the game rewards experimentation. With modular ships, you can combine different types of modules and create unique ships that serve very specific purposes, whether for trade, transport, or even protection. This diversity gave me the idea that each player can create their own naval management style, which is very motivating for those who like customization. In the end, the modular customization of ships in Anno 1-17 Pax Romana completely changed my view on maritime combat and trade in the series. It's an evolution that brings depth and freedom, overcoming the limitations of the fixed vessels of Anno 1800 and showing how the game can reinvent itself without losing the essence that makes the series so special to me. Pax Romana brings a refreshing approach to the inhabitants' needs system, which for me is much less linear than what was seen in Anno 1800. The aspect that most caught my attention was the possibility of offering alternatives for certain resources, as in the case of garum, which can be replaced by other types of food. This opened up a wider range of options to shape the economy according to your playstyle, without that immediate pressure to expand and conquer new territories in a forced way. I really liked this flexibility because, unlike Anno 1800, where you often found yourself forced to follow a rigid path of production and consumption so as not to halt progress, in Pax Romana, you have more freedom to adapt your economic chain. This made me feel that the city's management is more organic, being able to focus on strengthening the resources you already have instead of rushing to expand at all costs. It gives a greater sense of control and customization in how you manage your city. Another cool point is that this freedom allows for different playstyles to be viable. If you prefer a quieter development, you can choose to pick the alternative needs that best fit your pace, while those who want a more aggressive challenge can still explore the various paths of expansion and production. This variety made each match less predictable and more interesting for me because there is no longer a right way to prosper. Furthermore, this flexibility in the needs system reflects a greater care for the player's experience, preventing the game from turning into a frantic race for expansion. I felt that the game values planning and adaptation more than simply following a predetermined script. This made the game gain not only in strategy, but also in balance and fun, especially for those who like to explore all possibilities without feeling stuck in a rigid formula. The optional and flexible needs system of Anno 117 Pax Romana is a clear and welcome evolution from Anno 1800. For me, it makes the game more accessible and customizable, in addition to reinforcing the strategic aspect by allowing the player to adjust the economy according to their own playstyle without pressure to expand immediately. This change makes the game appeal to both those who want to play more casually and those looking for a deep and diverse challenge. The new game introduces a significant overhaul to the economic system which, for me, is one of its great advantages over Anno 1800. The absence of direct taxes completely changes the financial dynamics of the game, as now the economy depends much more on the final production carried out within the cities to generate boosts in residential income. This change makes management more integrated and challenging, as you need to think much more strategically about what to build and where. What I found particularly interesting in this revamped economy was the introduction of dual chains, dual production and demand chains, that make the urban layout much more strategic. Unlike the previous system, where many times it was just a matter of having the production chain, here you need to position everything to take advantage of area effects and ensure that the various stages of production potentiate each other. This provided me with a planning experience that requires attention and creativity, giving a more tactical feel to developing my city. Furthermore, the fact that there are no direct taxes influences how you structure your economy, as you can't just depend on collecting from residents to keep the city running. The focus on producing final goods within the cities makes all constructions and productions more connected, which makes city management more organic and challenging. I like the fact that this encourages the player to optimize spaces, routes, and the interaction between different types of production, which is a natural evolution for those who enjoy urban design in Anno. Another point that pleased me a lot was how these elements make the experience more immersive and aligned with the historical setting. The integrated economy makes you feel like you are truly building and managing an authentic Roman city, where the balance between production, consumption, and space is essential. This gave the game a more realistic and engaging feel than the more simplified model that Anno 1800 had. The revamped and integrated economy of Anno 117 is a change that brings more depth, strategy, and realism to the series. For me, this update elevates the challenge and fun by requiring more careful planning and better adaptation to the available space, making the game more complex, attractive, and faithful to the spirit of ancient Rome. This reformulation gives Pax Romana its own and consolidated identity within the Anno tradition. Anno 117 Pax Romana takes urban planning to a new level with its more puzzle-like layout, something that, for me, makes the game much more challenging and rewarding than Anno 1800. The introduction of placement bonuses, like bakeries that increase income but bring the risk of fire, or pig farms that reduce happiness, makes all the difference when setting up the city. This made me realize that each positioning choice needs to be much more thought out, as the consequences are not only positive, but can also bring problems that require quick solutions. This dynamic adds a special charm for those who like to strategize, because it's not enough just to place buildings side by side, but rather to analyze how they interact in terms of benefit and risk. I felt that the importance of the layout goes beyond the visual and organization, starting to directly influence the functioning and life of the city. This system reminded me more of a complex puzzle, in which each piece plays a crucial role for the whole to work well, something that stimulated me to experiment and plan more carefully. Compared to Anno 1800, where the urban layout was more focused on space optimization and efficiency, Pax Romana brought this extra layer of challenge, which gave a new face to the gameplay. I liked this change because it values the player's ability to deal with trade-offs and consequences more, which makes the experience more immersive and less linear. It's clear that the game wants you to think strategically about each building, not just as a producer or consumer, but as part of a living urban ecosystem. Furthermore, these environmental and social bonuses and penalties create situations where planning cannot be done just by looking at the short term. As pig farms decrease happiness while bakeries bring a risk of fire, you need to balance the pros and cons, which brings a sense of constant challenge that for me elevates the game to another level. This need to balance opposing forces adds much more interest for those who like to think about urban design in a deep way. The urban layout of Anno 117 Pax Romana is one of its great highlights for me, as it introduces a planning complexity that goes beyond what Anno 1800 offered. The placement bonus mechanic with its risks and rewards makes the game more strategic, challenging, and realistic, providing a richer and more engaging experience for those who enjoy the urban management aspect in the series games. Anno 117 Pax Romana really takes a huge leap in terms of graphics and visual immersion compared to Anno 1800, and that for me makes all the difference when diving into the game experience. The game's visual is more vibrant and full of details, which helps to bring the ancient Roman setting to life in a very convincing way. At the same tempo, the game manages to balance visual richness with the necessary clarity so that the player can understand and interact well with the environment, something I found fantastic. What most caught my attention was the work on the ambiance, which manages to capture that atmosphere of ancient Rome with a richness of texture, color, and animation that made me feel as if I were inside that era, almost like time travel. This graphic quality helps to create an escapist experience where we are not just building and managing cities, but living a piece of history in an almost dazzling way, which gives an extra layer of pleasure for those who like strongly thematic games. Another point that I found very positive is the attention to small visual details, such as the textures of the buildings, the light and shadow effects, and even the movement of people and animals. All this makes the city seem truly pulsating and alive, which is something I miss in many strategy games. In Pax Romana, these elements help to create an atmosphere that is as important as the strategy itself, increasing the emotional involvement with the game world. Furthermore, the warmer and more natural color palette reinforces the game's identity as a recreation of the Roman world, and this care made me realize how graphics are not just an ornament, but a fundamental part of building a faithful and rich atmosphere. The vibrant visual makes the experience more enjoyable for long gaming sessions, making me simply want to explore every corner of my city and admire what I've built. The graphics and visual immersion of Anno 117 are a clear advancement over Anno 1800 and bring a visual experience that is both functional and stunning. For me, this elevates the game to a level where strategy mixes with the feeling of being inside a living historical work of art, making each match much more memorable and enjoyable. This evolution reinforces the game's strength as a title that enchants both with its gameplay and its visuals. Pax Romana brought an interesting change to the system of choosing the initial province and managing colonies, which for me has a direct impact on the fluidity and integration of the gameplay. Unlike Anno 1800, where there was a clear separation between the Old World and other secondary regions, here you start directly in provinces like Latium, Rome, or Albion, Celts, which makes the experience more cohesive. This initial choice already sets a different strategic tone, because there is no mandatory need to manage multiple worlds, simplifying decisions without losing complexity. What caught my attention the most was how the internal trade networks were strengthened to ensure a more natural integration between the colonies. Unlike the segmented system of Anno 1800, where the colonies seemed like somewhat isolated places, in Pax Romana they are primary and deeply integrated thanks to cultural Romanization and internal trade. This approach made me feel my colonies as real extensions of the mother city and not as disconnected satellites, which is much more satisfying from a strategic and immersive point of view. Another aspect I liked was the way cultural Romanization interferes with the game, making the colonies not only economically linked, but also culturally integrated. This creates a much richer dynamic that requires more planning, as you need to think not only about resources, but about cultural assimilation. For me, this brought a historical depth that I found welcome, and that also directly influences the way you organize your expansion and maintain the cohesion of the empire. The absence of the secondary Old World, which in Anno 1800 could give the feeling of playing two different games, makes progression and management more organic. I felt less rupture in the experience, which is great for those who like the flow of civil construction and integrated economy. The challenge now is to manage a more interconnected and complex system, where decisions have more direct and immediate repercussions, which for me is more gratifying. The choice of initial province and the management of colonies in Anno 117 Pax Romana are an evolution that bring more cohesion, integration, and depth to the series. For me, this change simplifies the experience without making it less strategic or interesting, valuing cultural immersion and commercial links, and making the player feel like they are really building a living and connected Roman Empire instead of isolated points on a distant map.